Hey guys, hello and welcome to another video today of Power Automate. So in today's video, as you can see that I'll be talking about the interview questions and answers which are recently being asked in one of the MNC. I'll mention the MNC name in the last of the video, so stay tuned till last of the video. So in this interview, I have been asked several questions on Power Automate and on Power Apps. Also, the interview today are basically not only focused on Power Automate developer. There is no such thing as a RPA developer now. You have to be cross trained on several tools, right? And then if you are working on the Power Automate part, then you should be aware of Power Apps, Power Queries, Cloud Flows, SharePoint. So these are the basic things now. So okay, let's quickly get started. So the the start of the interview is the basic question like introduce yourself, my experience in Power Automate, how are the projects, how many projects, what are the things that we have used, is it a web based, Windows based, Excel, what kind of projects are there, right? Any other tools that I have worked on, like I have worked on UiPath, I have worked on Blue Prism, and all other tools that I have worked on. The third thing and the most important is have any experience on Python. Now Python is being very much into mainstream, so I will 100% recommend you to go through the Python course. I'll be starting a Python playlist soon. So these are the basic questions that are being asked right now. Coming on to the technical questions, the first one is a very basic one: which version of Power Automate are you using and what steps do we take while updating the Power Automate, right? So the version is basically, if you see, the version is currently 2.49. If you don't know how to check it, you go into this Power Automate, go to help section and click on about, and here you have the version of Power Automate. So this is how you can check your version of Power Automate which you are using. Now the follow-up question was, what steps do you take while updating the Power Automate, right? So while updating any RPA software, it is very necessary to take into consideration that in that new version is the web browser. If you are using any web browser in any of your automation, is that compatible with the new version, right? So these are the steps, these are the prerequisites that we take into consideration while updating our softwares. Okay, now the next one is, what are the APIs and how do you call an API in Power Automate, right? What are the inputs and outputs and how do you call an API in Cloudflare? Basically, what is an API is, it is application programming interface. Basically, you need to have to interact between an application and a software. It is not required to go through the UI version. We have some endpoint that are being exposed so that we can get the uh, output through some inputs, right? Also the API here in Power Automate can be used to interact with SharePoint, Outlook, or Dataverse without interacting with the UI element, right? So this is the answer, that okay, API is this, that you can interact with the application without going with the UI interface, right? So how can we call API in Power Automate desktop is, you can call it using the HTTP action, right? So here you have invoke web services. By using this action, you can call the API, right? So this first one is the URL, which are being, this is the endpoint which are being exposed by the application end, right? This is the base URL, or you can call it as an instance URL. Now method is, so you want to get some input, you want to post something, you want to connect, you want to delete something. So these are the method. Now accept is, so what kind of input does that accept? It can be XML or it can be JSON, right? So it can be XML or JSON. Custom headers, if any, a request body. For example, you want to get some particular things. For example, if you are using some API and it has a name, it has a class, so in request body you give the query, for example the instance URL, and then you give a query like select name from this instance URL, for example. So that query is given in the request body, right? And then there is a follow-up question: what is the output? Output is basically, if this is XML, then the output will be in XML format, and if it accepts JSON format, the output will be in JSON format, right? So if you see, the output will be response and status. So on success the status is 200, and response will be obviously in JSON or the XML format, right? So this is how you can call a API in the Power Automate desktop. Similarly, you can call a API into your Cloud Flow also. The action is almost same. I'll also take you to that also, right? So in Cloud Flow, if I go in here, I'll add a new step. So if you see HTTP, the actions are same basically. So here's the method are all same: get, put, post, patch, delete. The URL, the instance URL, the header, we have the same header. Query is, different here. And then you have a body, and then you have a cookie, and then you have some authentication also. For example, while getting the details from a particular website, you use the authentication, right? So you use the username and password. So the username password can be also given in here, the username and password. So this is how you can call an API in Power Automate. Right, now moving on to next slide. So since this was a follow-up question, that how do you convert JSON, so I get the output in a JSON format. How do you convert that JSON so that it can be readable? So as you know, the JSON format can be so I'll show you how can you convert a JSON format into a readable format. So if I go, so this is the action using which I can convert my JSON into a readable format, right? So if I go through a JSON, let me get a JSON format. So I have this JSON format where we have the name and the value, we have the header, and we have the value in the single comma. So if I run this one, right, so if you see, now it will be converted into a readable format. And now if I want to read the first name, last name, or any age, so what I can do is directly set variable, and I can use this, and then dot, if I say age. So now if you see, my age comes into a variable, right? So this is how we can get this JSON format into a readable format, right? So the answer is convert JSON to custom object, and then you can use a dot operator, for example, like this, or you can use dot first name, last name. So this is how you can read it. Now the second is, this is a very basic question being asked in almost all of the interviews, that what is the basic difference between a cloud flow and a desktop flow, and you must be aware of what are the differences. Although if you don't know, you can just ask the copilot also here. If I click help me understand difference between cloud flow and desktop flow, it will also, right? So it has given some reference, so I'll just open it quickly. So this is the basic difference between Cloudflow and TextFlow. Cloudflow are on the cloud, basically on the servers, basically on the web portal, right? But on TextFlow runs on a local machine. So currently I have this on my local, and my cloud flows are on the web portal, right? Automation is scope, and then we in Cloudflow we have connectors, and in Dexterflow we also have the connectors now, right? Then we have the setup. We have, so this is the basic difference between a Cloudflow and a Dexterflow, right? So next question was basically a scenario based question where I am being asked that how do you get the date if you have a date time variable, right? So I'll go quickly here. I will just search for a date. So current date time, I'll just run it. So I get today's date, which is 3rd of November, right? So what I'm being asked is how do you get this date only, right? So there are different methods that I can use. I can use a split method, right? I can split through a space so that it will give me the a date. Also, what I can use is I can use this convert date time to text. So I'll take this current date time, right, format, and I can use short date. And if I run this, right, this will be converted into date, right? So there are different methods. There are more methods. For example, if I go to set variable, right, and if you go into the current date time, I can use year, right, month, and then I can use day. This is also can be converted into a date time, right? So there are different methods that we can use to convert date time into only a date format, right? So this is also being converted. Okay, now the next question was how can you extract this last word from this phrase, right? So in order to do this, what we can do is we can use split method. So I'll take this variable. I will simply search for a split. Right now, what I want to do is extract this last phase. So what we can do is, since what we will do is we will count the list of items and then we can get the last index. Right. So this is how we can extract the last word. So I'll quickly show you how we can get that also. So I'll have this. I'll rename this variable to last index, right? And then I can use the text list, and here I can give the index. I can also give the dynamic index, but for now let's see. The automation comes, if I give 4 it will give me the fourth index. So this is how I can extract any of the element from my list, right? Okay, now the next was how do you execute a SAP script in Power Automate, and what is the keyword that we use to get the output, right? So the answer was VB script we can use to run SAP script in Power Automate, right? And echo is the keyword which we can use to get the output, right? So I'll show you a simple example. I'll just ask Copilot to create a VB script to add two numbers. right? So this is the script. I'll just simply use this script, and in place of these dynamic variables I'll give 2, and here I will give 4, right? And I'll run this one. So if you see in the output here, it gives me 6. Why? Because it has the echo keyword here. If I remove this line, right, it has not given me any output, but it has not failed also, right? But it has not given me any output. So wscript dot echo, and then dot sum is the variable. You can give, if you give 3, then it will give you 3 as the output, right? So if I run it like this, right, if you see 3, it has given me the output. So echo is the keyword which is used to get the output from VBScript action. Okay, now the next question was how to get the count of the files and how to get a particular kind of files from a folder. So it was a very easy one. So I'll show you quickly how can we get the files. So we have a file section, right? So get files in a folder. I can mention any folder. So I have this folder, right? So here I have some PDF files, and I want to get the count of this PDF files, or I want to get all these counts. So what I can do is I'll simply paste my path here, right? And if you wanted to include subfolder count also, then you can just turn on this option. I'll just click save, and I will run this. Now if you see here, we have all the files, and if you want to get the count, I'll just copy paste this variable here. I'll name this count, and in order to get the count, there is a property of files that you get the count, right? So it has given me 16, right? And we have, if you see, we have 16 files excluding the folders, right? So we have 16 selected, total we have 18. If I have given include subfolder, then the count will be 18. So this is how we can get all the files. Now if you want to get a particular kind of files, for example the PDFs, so what I'll give is dot PDF, and then if I run it, right, so we have currently 10 PDF files in our folder. So I hope you get it, how do you get the count of the files and how do you get a particular kind of file, right? So next was how to extract HTML table from a web page filled across multiple tables. So for this I have already, created a video on this. The previous, you can check out the previous video. I have also provided you link in the I section above. So this was a question asked where it was asked that how do you extract the tables filled across multiple pages, right? You don't know how many pages are there. So I have created whole of a video on this topic. You can go and check it out. I'll also provide you link in the description box below, right? So what is the dynamic attribute and how can we use dynamic selector in Power Automate? This is also, I have created a video on this. I will also provide the link for this video. It is basically attached to that HTML video only. So there are two videos where I have explained how can you give the dynamic attribute and how can you extract the HTML table. So you can go and check out those two videos, very helpful videos. Right now, next question was how can you use SQL in Power Automate and how do you execute procedures. right? So this is if you check the sequel, right? So these are some actions that you have to give the connection string, and then if you have to have procedures, then using this action you can actually execute the procedures in Power Automate. Right. So next question was, what is a Dataverse and any projects on Dataverse? So I have created a video on the Dataverse. How can you create tables in Dataverse? What is Dataverse? And I have also prepared a project on Dataverse where we are extracting a dashboard report, right, using a cloud flow. I will give you the link in the description below. You can check out that video. It will explain you a project on Dataverse and how the Dataverse works, how the things are being stored in a Dataverse, right? Now, next was, how have you used Power Queries? Give examples. Since I have not very much used Power Queries, what I'll do is I will give you the link. What is a Power Query? Microsoft has explained it very well. It is, it is used to extract the data from multiple sources. Also, I'll give you the link for this article. This is a very good article explaining what is a Power Query, how the Power Query works. It has also provided some examples of Power Query, right? What, how can we use, and what is Power Query in Power Automate? So that you can get a basic idea that what is a Power Query, so that in the interview you can get prepared. Okay, you are not blank, but you know something about Power Query, right? I have also provided you the link here. Now the next was how to use SharePoint actions in Power Automate Desktop and Cloudflow. Basically, the input in Cloud and Desktop are same, because the Power Automate Desktop is also utilizing the same actions as in Cloudflow. So input and outputs are same. I'll show you some actions of SharePoint. How do you use a SharePoint? So here all the actions of SharePoint are here. So basically, if you have a SharePoint, you have a particular URL for SharePoint. I'll create a separate video on SharePoint, how can you utilize these actions. But for now, this, since this was the question asked, so these are the actions what we can utilize, and the prerequisites for them is you must have a SharePoint, and you have to create a connection between a SharePoint and your Power Automate desktop. And if you are utilizing Cloudflow, you must have a connection between them, right? So here you have all the actions. For example, if you have a particular list in SharePoint, you can use this action to get all the list of the SharePoint. Right, so now there are two or three scenario based questions. So the first was that there is some file on your local desktop. For example, I have this file on my local desktop. Right now, what I want to do is I want to utilize Cloudflow to read that file and send it through email. Right, so Cloudflow, in order to for Cloudflow to interact with your local desktop, you have a prerequisites of on data premises, right? So I have prepared a separate video on that also. File system, I'll provide you the link in the description box below and in the I button also. So in order to utilize, or in order to read the files from your Cloudflow, which are placed on the local desktop, you have to get the on premises data gateway, using which you can read your files, right? So I'll provide you the link for this. You can go through that video so that you have a better understanding of how can you read the files using your Cloudflow, right? Now this is another question which is asked, that we have a Cloudflow and it needs to send a file through a Cloudflow. You have shared the Cloudflow as a co-owner. For example, you have a Cloudflow. I'll take this one up, right? So this one, I'll just delete this action. I'll add a new one so that you will better understand. Right, so this is the cloud flow which we have, and in this cloud flow what is being asked is that you have a flow which sends an email. Right now what you have done is you have shared this flow as a co-owner to your colleague. Now what this cloud flow needs to be done is it should send the email through that from address. So from address, if I am sending it, the mail should send from my email, and if anyone else is sending the email through this cloud flow, it should be sending it through their email. Right, so for this we have a dynamic attribute also. If you see user email, right, so using this user email, Power Automate will dynamically get the user email and it will send the email through that email address. Right, now the next question was what is an AI builder and how do you configure the AI builder. Let's project on AI builder. So I have made, I think, two videos particularly on AI builder. I have explained everything from start to end. What is an AI builder? How do you extract document? I have also prepared a project on AI builder so that you will understand what is an AI builder. I'll also prepare more. For now, that video will be very useful for you to get a basic understanding of how AI builder works in Power Automate, right? So you can go through that video also. I'll provide you the link in the description box below. Now, there's a question, what is an environment variable and how can we call an environment variable inside a desktop? So environment variable is basically a variable which changes from one environment to another environment. For example, you are currently developing a project which uses development URL. Now you move this project into production. So your production URL will change. So that kind of value will go into your environment variable value, right? I have also prepared a video around environment variable. How can we use it? Now the next follow-up question was how can you call an environment variable inside a desktop flow. So to call an environment variable inside a desktop flow, we do not have a direct action, right? So if you search it, you have get set and delete environment variable, but this is a Windows environment variable and not the Power Automate or Dataverse environment variable. So in order to call your variable inside a text of flow, you have to create the input variable, right? So here you have to create your input variable and you have to pass these values from your cloud flow, right? So this is how you can pass your environment variables from cloud flow to desktop flow, right? So these are the questions asked in a recent interview. There is one more question asked that what have you worked on power apps and what is the difference between a canvas and model driven app. This is very common questions which are now being asked, right? So you can go through that question also. I have not listed down here. A very basic question, you will get the answer to that question regarding power apps. If you don't know power apps, I will definitely recommend you to learn power apps, right? So this is all about in this video. I hope the video will help you in the future to get your interview cracked. Thank you for watching. Like, share and subscribe. Bye. Happy automation. See you in the next video.